Okay, I guess it's time. I don't think we have any new members today, so we can just skip that. Let's take a look at the RFCs. Wait, sorry. I'm not sure if you can see. Crap, this didn't work. I'll have to share again. Give me a sec. I'm going to share a window. Yes, this is great. I should be seeing a board. I don't think we have any new RFCs, but we have a few that were accepted and are, being implemented already, including eager mode, which at this point I think we should move to accepted if everyone agrees. I know that Niels is here to talk a little bit about what's happening there. I don't think we got a lot of movement this console UI upgrade though, right? Like there were, oh yeah, I remember. I know what we're gonna do about this. Let's not talk about it now. But yeah, no new RFCs, a bunch of them are accepted, including the execution tags, which are tentatively coming in the next Flyte release, both like the backend and Flyte kit. PRs are out. I know Kevin's not here, but I'm helping shepherd those along. We just got this RFC for a more sane overridable defaults. Katrine is also working on this, making this change. It's pretty amazing. I also learned that you can actually roll a deployment. There's like people out there who worked on operators to help facilitate that without you having to manually roll out the deployment, the K8s deployment. Like there's a thing called, I think it's called Reloader, that does that for both like config maps and secrets, which is a great feature. I don't understand why Kubernetes hasn't implemented that yet. They've had an issue open for, I don't know, 7 years. And I'm not even joking. Anyways, super excited about this. This is an area of Flyte that I find it so complicated. So great. Array node is also getting to an experimental stage, so it will be out for 1.9 at an experimental capacity. This will be awesome. Great. No new RFCs, a bunch of them accepted. And I don't know, Niels, if you want to talk about eager mode, what's going to happen there, feel free.
Yeah, so it's just been many months in the making. The latest thing that I implemented was to actually kill the subtasks that any eager workflow has. So yeah, any eager workflow is spun off. If I terminate that eager task, eager workflow, it'll recursively terminate the rest of the subtasks. So that was kind of like the last usability thing that I really wanted, because I think shipping that even in experimental without that feature would have been pretty bad. Yeah, so I'm working to clean up that PR. The last thing I kind of wanted to sneak in there was to somehow auto register. Like if I PyFlyte run an eager workflow today, because it's not an actual workflow, it won't like register the subtasks called inside of it. So like you kind of have to do a PyFlyte register step everything in the script beforehand, because all eager workflows do is like get the latest version of the task and then run that. So if the tasks haven't been registered, it'll just fail. So this could be like a documentation type thing that we solve later, which I think is okay, actually. But
really, yeah. I think this should happen by default in PyFlyte run for all tests. Like this is it's implementation detail today. I think like we start with specific Flyte entity and register only the the entities that are related to that, workflow or launch plan. So
we have an internal registration script that does very similar things to PyFlyte run, but we have our run command registers and then starts execution. So because we have the same problem.
It's not easy to solve.
Why not?
Because you have to compile it.
Why can't?
Yeah.
I mean,
you can solve it for this. You can solve it for dynamic tasks. So that you can PyFlyte run a dynamic task and somehow pick up all the underlying entities. The way it works today for workflows is that we run a compilation step. So we know which tasks belong to the workflow. If you can't compile it, which I don't think we can, because that's the whole point of it, you can't do that. It's a little bit tricky.
Yeah.
He's right. It's a little bit more complex than we're making it out to be.
I thought that register imports the workflows and then registers all Flyte entities that are imported.
Yeah, so for register, that is the case.
Okay.
So that's what I was saying about like documenting eager workflows by saying, hey, you need to register everything first before running it. And oh yeah, I guess that this also applies to dynamic workflows. So cool.
I guess my comment was more like towards this regular PyFlyte run, where today we only register the entities that are in the path,
AST parsing.
Not going there yet.
Okay, sorry.
Cool, it's all right. Cool, let's keep going. No new RFCs. What's happening to the config overrides?
Bernhard and I and Byron wrote on Slack this week, and LinkedIn, they have an internal deadline until they want to have this done. And that's why we discussed with him that they will take the lead on implementing that, because it's not a feature that either Bernhard or I need at work, so we can't work on it at work time. And that's not fast enough for them. So they have a deadline that they want to have it done this quarter. And he will ask internally whether he can have engineering capacity for that. And if yes, then they will take our over PRs because they need it quicker. We can build it. That's the update for this week.
So
I guess
like thinking like this week, next week, like I'm thinking, I'm more like, do you think it's worth like just to help them get this thing out faster, like have, I don't know, more frequent syncs with them? Like how are you helping them now? You just like hand it over, like you'll be available for reviewing PRs, or like
that definitely. We also offered, like, first of all, he has to check whether with his manager, I guess, whether he can have capacity. And I guess we'll have a meeting with them where we explain to them what we did, what we think needs to be done. And definitely we can review the PRs. But let's see what he says when he talks to basically his team. I guess we need an answer there first.
All right, cool, thanks. It's because it'd be one of those big features, awesome. All right, let's keep going. I think we only have one new idea in the incubator, but like a few updates on the other. So Niels, how about we start out with this Jupyter run thing? What is this?
Yeah. So, I guess can you go to the link on your screen share? I can just talk through it. Right now we see the Flyte RFC's project board.
Oh, really? I'm sharing my whole window. Why isn't? Okay.
Oh, maybe it's just me.
No.
Oh, we see the RFC board.
Okay. I'll have to share again. Man, Zoom is killing me today. Right? My entire window. Why?
No, wrong one.
Is it this?
Yeah.
Great. Do you see it now?
Cool. Yep. Yeah, so just to be very clear, this was just hacked together in like a day or two, just as a proof of concept. But it has been based on like feedback, that we've had in OSS and also closed source. But I guess like the user story here is, as a data scientist, I want to like run Flyte kit code directly within my notebook so that I can bypass the whole step of like writing the Python script, PyFlyte registering that, and just like making that a smoother experience. So this could be completely the wrong approach. But if you look at this notebook, if you scroll down, the interesting part is, well, first we load that run notebook remote thing up there. And then at the bottom is a like Jupyter magic that's been imported that is basically PyFlyte run. And all the magic that's happening here is it's like treating the notebook as a script. It's like scraping out the Python code, throwing it into a Python script, running that thing, and then just forwarding a bunch of these arguments to PyFlyte run. So that's pretty much this experience. I've chatted with like some other folks like Jeev, and like I think it just like really depends on how people who use notebooks a lot would want to do something like this. So I'm chatting with Greg Gaidish next week just to get a sense of like what that might look like. But as a proof of concept, like Jupyter notebooks is like super flexible. Like you can, with magics, you can just like splice you can like with magics and tags, you can just like select specific cells. You can run bash scripts and SQL scripts with like %% SQL. So it's like a lot you can do here, but it's, a matter of how we want to exactly make the experience work.
Yeah, like I don't know how complex people make notebooks,
As far as I can tell, like the magics are bounded. So like if you do like a bash, a %% sh, and then you have a bunch of bash code in the cell, it's like bounded. It's like run, I think, in a subprocess, that code. So I think it's like reasonable to expect if I say %% Flyte, like if we want to invert this model, instead of like having this be treated as an entire Flyte script, if we want like local code, and then Flyte code, and then bring that back into your local runtime, I think we could like figure out something there as well.
How would that look like, Niels? Like you'd have a magic that would say % Flyte, and then what would happen?
Like you can have a magic that is both. So in this case, with just 1%, it becomes like a magic function, where the arguments after it like are just passed into the magic function. Sorry, that's like really confusing. But there's a @decorated function somewhere that takes in that line, and you can do whatever with that line. You can parse it with shlex and then forward these to like some other subprocess call or something else. But if it has 2%, you get both the cell content below the % sign, and you can pass it arguments. So you could have a thing that's like % Flyte kit. You pass it PyFlyte run arguments, and then it just like treats the cell below it as like a self-contained script.
I see. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Neil.
So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I have one question. Are we able to build the image or image spec in the notebook?
I think yes. So like if everything just reduces to a Python script, then yes, we can. Yeah. Assuming that the local Jupyter, like wherever the Jupyter server is running, has Docker installed. So I did test this would work on a Google Colab, but you would have to use a pre-built image.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. So what is happening there? Do you want people to give more use cases, or like what are your expectations there?
Yeah, I think gathering user-facing code, like what the ideal interaction model or set of interaction models would look like, would be great. So we can like share this in announcements or something. But like if anyone here works in notebooks a lot or has seen like what people have tried in terms of like using Flyte inside a notebook, then I think that should inform the design. Because yeah, at this point, like it will work, with some constraints, but I think it's like nailing down the user experience.
Yeah, I like it how it simply reduces to, PyFlight run, local run. Like there's no extra concept that people have to grok. Like if you know what PyFlight run does, it just applies that model to one single Jupyter notebook. But I don't know enough if that's enough. Cool. I don't know if people, okay. Does anyone want to talk about any of those more recent ideas in the incubator? Like, I know that we had at least one update to these two. I don't know which one. Feedback, yeah. So, Dennis,
colleague of mine.
Yeah, colleague of yours, right, Fabio?
But that's not that's feedback to the idea. I think let's talk about Dan's idea, which I like. It's 2 comments up, 3 comments up. That's the same page. Just scroll a little bit up. That one, yeah.
Yeah, so having like a sidecar and very common. Like people do this, but any other concern besides what's here then? Like you thought about this more, or I don't know if you saw this comment that Dennis put here, like essentially relying on K8s events to store those logs, those special logs, right?
Sorry, can you scroll up again? What was this thing?
This is
Pod logs feedback map.
It's about creating a communication channel from Flyte running in a task pod to Propeller, so that in a task pod we can say, hey, we have this new log link, please show it in the UI, or hey, we updated the deck, please update it.
Is this only for log links, Dan?
No, I don't think so. It's about creating a communication channel that doesn't require like a message queue.
There's a million things that we need, like as things are progressing, that having some kind of feedback mechanism like to Flyte Propeller would be advantageous.
If we had this, would we use it? If we had this, would we use it for eager mode?
I mean, the idea behind, like you're talking eager mode, like bringing back like compiled workflows and etc.
No. Like instead of kicking off a brand new task as an execution through admin, which is, I believe, what the eager mode engine does, it would invoke all the tasks and sub workflows directly through.
I wouldn't use it for that. I mean, this is more so for like a not like reporting metadata back from FlightKit to Flyte Propeller. I think right now, like for flight decks, we write a file out to S3. So we're talking about how can we report log links at runtime for like 1DB, things like that. Appending those to a file in S3, I think, is a very poor idea. we're talking about reporting span metrics from FlightKit. And right now, those are just, the proposal was to just continue to append those to a file in the blob store and then have, existence checks in Flight Propeller and things like that. As we want more and more information to come from FlightKit and be reported by Flight Propeller, this is a really hacky way to do it, to use this blob store for like inter-process communication. Never what it was designed to do, not a very good use case for it. So the proposal here was like, if we had, my original idea was just to emit a log. Propeller can check the logs of a pod. That very rightfully so, some kinds of production level use cases can have millions of lines of logs depending on what's enabled. So checking the logs isn't necessarily a great idea. But iterating on it, thought maybe we have a sidecar where the FlightKit can connect, through some kind of local host socket or a shared volume or something like that to a process running in a sidecar that emits, regex parsable logs. Propeller can check those logs, and then that can be a very lightweight feedback mechanism. Can say, hey, add this log, like, hey, add this span information, add this, et cetera, et cetera. But kind of meant as like an extremely lightweight feedback, but then it would be in real time as well. So you could say, hey, I just wrote this flight deck, add this and make it available. It would be a very fast feedback mechanism, whereas right now it's not.
And sorry, go ahead, Fabio.
One thing for context, I think the idea is to find something that does not use a message queue, right? I think we're aware that would be the proper way to do it, but we don't want to complicate the deployment. The question is there a smart way to do it without using PubSub, basically?
Or like any kind of external, PubSub certainly the right use case, but you could use, Redis queues, anything like that.
Exactly. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, more complicating infra, I don't think is anyone's going to want that.
Can we talk about that though? Like, what is, like, besides bringing in more complexity to the system, like, why can't we not have strict guarantees for these kinds of events and introduce some complexity, like as you mentioned, then using like Redis for this? Like, I can, like, we obviously put back pressure like mechanisms so that propeller doesn't kill over if for whatever reason the FlightKit pod like starts emitting 100 millions of those logs. But why can't we assume more complexity to bring in this feature in a more?
I think Keaton's argument was that a lot of people on Slack already asked today how to deploy it, and that it's not easy for especially people coming from the ML world, and that more infrastructure is not going to help. And I agree with that. On the other hand, I want to ask the question, there are discussions about Slack notifications, and that also will use SNS and SQS and then Google PubSub. So there are already features that will rely on a message queue system. Can we piggyback here? Not saying we should. I think it's also like a nice idea here, but the question is, other services use it already. Can't we use it here too? Should be a conscious decision at least.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that has to do with more complicated infra. What is this going to be available on? We're already running into use cases where like single binary mode, running in the sandbox and things like that. Like we don't want to add PubSub into that. Or for like production level deployments, yes, fantastic. I think large scale production level deployments, but further complicating the simple use case, this using these pod logs would make it still available from in any deployment. Yeah, I'm okay kind of with whatever.
Maybe there could even be different ways to do it, kind of the way that doesn't use complicated infrastructure, which would be this here. And then for people running like a staging in the production cluster and really like putting a lot of effort into this, for those people, it will not be complicated to use SNS there.
And I certainly thought about that, like the way it's implemented in Propeller, you can have, very easily say, like in Enum in the configuration, like we do with the logs and everything else right now that says, what mechanism are you using? Propeller creates the pods. It's very easy for us to say, like, pass a argument to Flyte to say, write to the sidecar, and Propeller will create this pod with the sidecar. Or it can say write to Kafka or something like that as well. So yeah, I mean, we can certainly make it extensible and follow that. I don't think we're locked into whatever we decide to do from the beginning, but I think that, like I said, this is blocking a number of different features. I think like the Flyte metrics, the logs. So coming up with the solution is important.
So I personally need to talk to Dennis about this. I can't judge whether using Kubernetes events is a good idea here. I really don't know. But I like the idea of the sidecar as a fast feedback mechanism, because I think it's super simple to do that even in a demo deployment, and it's fast. And if it's the sidecars logs that we parse, I don't see performance issues there. We could limit how many log lines people can send to the sidecar.
Right. Like Kubernetes logs, my Kubernetes events, my only concern with that is like the Flyte container running internally. I am not sure. I mean, I don't know enough about all that mechanism right there. How difficult is it? What kind of dependencies are introduced if we want to, emit Kubernetes events from Flyte and this and that? And are there complexities there that can screw everything up?
Yes.
I'm not sure. I have to look into it.
I don't know either. So how do we make progress on this?
Let's do the following. We have our ops weekly tomorrow, and Dennis is really good with Kubernetes. I'll just talk to him tomorrow and ask what it would entail. Understand the question that you are interested in, what it would mean for Flyte, which dependencies would have to be pulled in, and how complicated that would be. I'll ask him tomorrow, and I'll report back, and then we can just see what we do with it.
That sounds great.
Cool. Thank you. How about this? I don't remember if we had any more. Yeah, no.
Yeah, also like the update is Dennis and I will talk next week Tuesday we'll talk next week Tuesday about this, look at it beforehand also to prepare, and I think it makes sense to talk about it at the meeting after.
Nice.
I think it's just a lot of very intricate details, and it's very difficult to talk about when you don't look at the code.
All right. Thank you. I think this is it. Let's just double check that there were.
And Fabio, I haven't looked at your comments yet. I will do that today in response to the artifact.
Yeah, totally fine. No worries. But I really like it. The entire time I found myself writing a comment and then reading more and was like, oh, okay, it's answered there. I would have done the same thing. So yeah, there's not a lot of critique there.
Hopefully by the next meeting I can have the demo, which will rely on Redis, by the way.
Oh man. Okay. I think we talked about this during the last meeting. This is just like she just dumped what we talked about, like her use case here, right? I don't think there are a bunch of like feature requests essentially.
Yeah, it seems like the external stuff changing and happening, affecting Flyte stuff is very compelling. I guess, yeah, I struggle to think of within Flyte use case where you can't just compose it all into a single workflow. I guess the best thing I can think of is like a batch inference pipeline that uses an artifact from a model training pipeline, and you don't want to like strongly couple those things, and you just want yeah, I guess that's not really reactive. So I don't know, like anyway, I'll stop rambling.
I don't know if some of the work that we're doing for the Airflow agent can like be extended to start supporting this, but like, I don't know. And I'm not sure anyone else is thinking about this, or at least very seriously. Not yet, at least. Cool. The one is going to end this meeting now. How about this locking mechanism? I know I don't think there was an RFC yet for this. Yeah, that was the latest. All right. Next is enough for the RFC incubator. Community polls didn't really get
I think we have David for this one.
anything here. So if anyone has questions or anything that they want to discuss related to, you know, PR that's ongoing, like Pydantic might be a good.
Yeah, Arthur is here. I think we should talk about Pydantic.
Yeah.
Who gives a summary of what's been happening? Do you want to do that, Arthur?
Sure, I can go. So we have a PR ready for an integration that lets you pass Pydantic base models between Flyte tasks. And the question came up about the new Pydantic version 2.0 and how this might work in. At first glance, we thought that it would easily extend to that. However, it turns out that some internal methods are deprecated in Pydantic 2.0, and they've been replaced with a kind of a new serialization logic that they want to use going forward. So the question now is mostly around how do we want to support both Pydantic 1 and 2, yeah, what kind of logic are we willing to internalize into the Pydantic plugin in Flyte to enable serialization and deserialization smoothly, versus how much will we want to rely on how Pydantic does it with encoding to JSON, where some of the Flyte supported objects are, yeah, of course, not very conveniently encodable to JSON, such as a big tensor. So the current solution is relying on both protobuf and JSON. So the Flyte supported objects are serialized into protobuf and separated out from the base model so that the rest of the base model can be serialized using Pydantic's engine. So this ends up with two separate object stores. One is the Pydantic JSON with the base model, and then a separate, call it dictionary, where you have the Flyte supported objects, Flyte file, Flyte directory, tensors, pandas data frames, you name it, serialized to protobuf. And these then get combined back when deserializing it. So yeah, I think
why that doesn't work for Pydantic v2.
The logic works. It's mostly about the aesthetics of the code, as far as I see it. Like the way that it's that Pydantic serializes in v1 is that you can add your custom serializer onto the objects, and then Pydantic will call on a dunder method in the object and check if there's a serializer. If there is, then you can use that one when serializing. Now in Pydantic 2.0, the logic is slightly different. They expect you to add, for instance, a decorator in the base model itself, where there's then a function that defines how to serialize the base model. Or alternatively, you can add something similar on the object, but it looks quite different. So I think it's the logic as far as serialization and deserialization goes on an abstract level is the same, but the code that puts that into action and like integrates that with Pydantic, it looks quite different depending on if you're using v1 or v2.
Do we have to, when you say that the validators, so in v1 it's basically JSON serializers, right, that are passed to JSON. When you say that the serializers they have to be methods of the base model and then you put a decorator on it, does it mean that we have to kind of monkey patch them in for that to work, or?
Yeah, I'm not certain enough at this point. I'm not so familiar with Pydantic 2.0. I would need to look deeper into how they do it under the hood. But at a first stab at it, I couldn't get it working by just replacing the old get validators method that is placed on objects with the new one. I think I forgot what the name of that method is. But it's slightly different.
Is there
It's not really an, sorry.
Can we just release this one for V1 and pin it to less than 2, and then address V2 separately? Like, there's if the pedantic core itself is like pretty different, I think it's fair that any plugin based on it is also fairly different.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think that the objects or like the classes and the methods that we have in the PR will quite easily extend to V2. I think all we need to write is the adapter that adds them into the base model in V2 in the right way. And the right way is something I'm not exactly sure right now because I'm not so familiar with V2. So
here's
I guess so.
Here's a example PR of like the diff. There, I had to do this recently in Pandera. PR is not merged yet, but it's just like different conventions. Yeah. So if you go to like the model.py file.
Yeah, get Pydantic core schema. Yeah, this looks familiar.
Yeah.
So this is already quite helpful. Yeah.
Like this is how Fast API does this as well, supports both. So I just kind of cargo culted that pattern of just if V1 or V2 do this and then etc. So
yeah.
But
I'd like to say
agree.
we can probably do the same here. It's just that I'm not familiar enough to do it right now. I would need a bit of time to familiarize myself to do it right. But I think this looks like the pattern that I was expecting.
Yeah, I do agree with Yi of just like pinning this and then unpinning it once we get support for V2.
Okay. Let me think. Was there anything holding us back from actually releasing this? I think this is pretty much.
We solved the problem of figuring out which types are supported by the type ended. We have that right, Arthur?
Yeah. So that's solved. Thanks, Kevin, for providing the answer to how to do that. Yeah, I think it should be fine. I mean, I'm a rather new user of Flyte. I really like it, but I think my capacity of testing whether this works in every edge case is probably not as good as if someone who has built the engine, like if you know where deserialization and deserialization.
I can we use Pydantic quite a lot. I can build an image with that version and just see whether our tests pass. I mean, it doesn't cover everything, obviously, but we have Pydantic everywhere.
That would be great, just as a last resort, because I've tested it and it looks like it works to me, but I wouldn't know if I've missed something.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Thank you. And I can have a look at this V2. I said I don't think it's going to be much additional work. It's just on me to familiarize myself with how it's done in V2.
All right, thank you. So Fabio, you'll run through a quick test. We'll test it off also, of course.
We can also get a beta out, if like this makes testing easier. Like
Yeah, okay, that sounds good. Let's cut alpha release off of the branch.
That's cool. Can you write on Slack when you did that and install it?
Perfect.
amazing. Does anyone have anything else you want to discuss at the time? I guess no. Cool. thank you so much. And I'll see you all in 2 weeks.
Have a good
Thanks.
rest of the day. See you.
Thanks, everyone. Good day.